Years ago, when I was working a contract job at a studio, I rented a townhouse in what seemed like a quiet, decent neighborhood. It was a cozy two-bedroom place, perfect for my girlfriend Emily, now my wife, and me. The real selling point? A single attached garage, something I was particularly excited about, especially with the brutal winters in the area. A warm, snow-free car every morning. That was a luxury I wasn't about to take for granted. But of course, nothing good ever comes without a downside. Enter my next-door neighbor, Tyler. Tyler was, without exaggeration, one of the worst human beings I've ever had the displeasure of living next to. He was the kind of guy who radiated insecurity and overcompensated for it in all the worst ways. Short, very short, with a receding hairline he tried to hide with a buzz cut, he seemed determined to prove his dominance by being the loudest, most obnoxious guy around. His pride and joy was a massively lifted pickup truck, one of those ridiculous custom jobs where the tires were so oversized that he needed a running start just to get in. It was laughably impractical, but he drove it around like he was king of the road. His other prized possession? A heavily modified Honda Civic, painted in a garish neon green color with a black racing stripe. The kind of car that could be heard from 2 blocks away, thanks to the unnecessarily loud exhaust he loved revving at all hours. Most days, Tyler could be found sitting at the end of his driveway with his 4 equally annoying friends. They'd drink beer, throw cans around like the world was their trash can, and blast music loud enough to shake the windows of every house on the street. No one did anything about it, and I would later find out why. On the day I moved in, Tyler actually seemed decent. He was hanging out by his truck as the movers arrived, and even offered to move his car so they could have easier access to the driveway. It seemed like a small but considerate gesture, but as soon as the last box was inside, the real reason for his kindness became apparent. "Hey man," he said, leaning against his truck. "So, the guy before you used to let me park in your garage during the winter. My truck doesn't fit, and the Civic, man, it's too nice to leave out in the snow." I hesitated. I hadn't even gotten the garage access code or key from the landlord yet. "I don't even have a way to open it," I said honestly. Tyler frowned. "Yeah, the code and my key stopped working too," he muttered. "Guess the landlord changed it." That night, I brought it up to my landlord. His response was immediate. "Do not, under any circumstances, give him access to that garage." It turned out that the previous tenants had been robbed just after Christmas. Electronics, jewelry, expensive tools, gone. No forced entry, no signs of a break-in. The landlord suspected Tyler and his friends, but there was never enough proof. So when the previous tenants moved out, he changed every lock and code before I moved in. When I finally told Tyler that I wouldn't be letting him use my garage, his entire demeanor changed. "That's bullshit," he snapped, his face going red. "I've always parked in there." I stood my ground. "Not anymore." For a second, I thought he was actually going to throw a punch. His fists clenched, his eyes burned with fury, and he took a step forward. But one of his friends grabbed his shoulder and muttered something to him. Tyler took a deep breath, exhaled sharply, and then sneered at me. "Fine," he said, voice dripping with venom. "Be an asshole about it." That was the beginning of hell. The harassment started small. Empty beer cans would mysteriously appear on my lawn every morning. Then it escalated. Whenever Emily went outside alone, Tyler and his friends would catcall her. It was always under the guise of just joking around, but we both knew what it was. Then he started blocking my driveway with his truck. It wasn't fully obstructed, but I had to do an awkward maneuver every time I wanted to pull in or out. He started blasting music at absurd hours. 3 a.m. on a Wednesday? Sure. 7 a.m. on a Saturday? Why not? The worst part? When other neighbors called the cops, nothing happened. That was when I found out something interesting. Tyler's dad had been a cop. He died when Tyler was a teenager, and ever since, the local police seemed to give him a pass on just about everything. Noise complaints, parking violations, public disturbances. Nothing stuck. Tyler knew it, and he exploited it at every opportunity. Then winter hit, and things got worse. Tyler wasn't allowed to park his truck on the street anymore due to snowplow regulations. He tried using the visitor lot, but the HOA shut that down. That meant his precious Civic was left outside in the elements. And then, because karma has a sense of humor, some local kids vandalized his car cover and scratched the paint. Tyler lost it. "If you just let me use the fucking garage, none of this would have happened," he shouted at me, practically foaming at the mouth. Then, after New Year's, I woke up to find my Christmas decorations destroyed, garlands ripped down, lights shattered. My inflatable snowman, stabbed and left deflated on the lawn like a murder victim. That was it. If Tyler wanted a war, I was going to end it. That night, the temperature dropped below 0. At 10 p.m., I grabbed my garden hose and started spraying down every inch of his Civic. The water froze instantly. Every 30 minutes, I repeated the process, making sure the ice layered over itself. By morning, the Civic was completely encased in ice. When Tyler saw it, he screamed. He called the police. They did nothing. He called the fire department. They also did nothing. He and his friends tried everything to free the car: power tools, hammers, sawzalls. One genius sliced into the fender, another cracked the windshield. For a week, the Civic was frozen to the ground. By the time it finally broke free, it looked like it had been in a demolition derby. That spring, my contract ended, and I moved out, leaving Tyler and his wrecked Civic behind. A few years later, my landlord called me with an update. Tyler and his friends got arrested for robbing a convenience store. And just like that, the worst neighbor I ever had finally got what was coming to him.